Welcome to Money on Tap. Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. That's what we do on this show. We look at all sides of the issues, and we bring a fully independent planning perspective to the table.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. My name is Seth Crossman, and I'm here with Ben Brayshaw and Dan Mickelin. Welcome. It's good to see you guys today.
Nice to see you, Seth. Nice to see you, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing great. As usual, excited for the show, but excited to be through Halloween. It's such an ordeal at my house, so glad to take that next step into fall here and get into the holidays.
I'm sorry. I just am not a Halloween fan. Other than the candy the kids bring home, I got nothing going for it.
We had some fun. We had some people doing different stuff in the neighborhood. One of kind of a newer small church was doing like a little carnival for the kids in the driveway. It was, face painting, throw the ring on the pumpkins that they had set up in front of the garage, win a prize. And they were just doing some good community work and, letting people know that where they're at and what's going on. And kids loved it.
Well, I didn't know you guys do carnivals out west, but that's nice to know.
We're always happy out here, Ben. What else do? We just have carnivals all the time.
Sweet. Well, I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday. So
we are going to be talking today about found money and how to keep it. For us, this is a topic that we're going through. I mean, it's kind of like, well, there's been this talk of this wealth transfer out there, this great wealth transfer. And that's primarily been focused on the silent generation and the baby boomers and their accumulation of wealth. And when they're passing, what does that look like? How does that wealth transfer happen? And it's been a topic for a while. And we've seen families and clients and new clients that come through that are part of that story. What's interesting is how many people out there have no idea that they're either currently a part or about to be a part of that story as well. So that's today's topic. We're here to help you, understand how you can become prepared, even if that isn't a part of your story. Or if it is, what you can do to start to work through that process. So we're excited to bring this show to you today and share some of our success and share some of the people's that had some learning experiences on this path. With that, it's going to be a lot of fun. We can't wait to get into it with you.
Seth, was a really good intro on how this is all going down. And I think the thing that we're going to bring to the table is for a lot of people, the unexpected inheritance. Like if you're listening, you're like, well, I'm not going to get anything. You'd be shocked. I mean, the number of people we have helped with beneficiary work and all sorts of different things that are happening in life, seeing people name beneficiaries that might be a niece or a nephew or a friend or a friend's children there's just so many people are giving money all over the place. They have a lot. And they're like, I want my kids to be okay, but they don't need to have everything because we have so much. Warren Buffett had that, in an article a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about how he wanted to leave money to his kids enough to be successful, but not to be lazy, basically, or not do anything. I think you guys remember that. Mm-hmm. And I think there's people out there doing that all the time. And I meet people that are like, yeah, I want to leave this much to my kids. This is going to go to my nieces and nephews. This is going to go to my friends' children because they don't have anything. And I know I want their kids to have something that, there's just so much gifting going on. I don't think people realize we get to see it, firsthand. And I think that's really important.
Well, with that, we're going to jump into Money in the News.
Today from Fox Business, Megan Henney, private sector job growth increases less than expected in October. So this I thought was interesting on a couple levels, particularly as it relates to the Fed and their interest rates, which is obviously a hot topic here for us. We discussed that in some form or fashion, probably weekly, because it really is one of the things that is driving the market in any given direction on any given day. But we know that the Fed stated for a long time one of their goals in the rate increases was to kind of force some degree of recession on the economy. And one of the pegs they've been looking at was, job growth and how to kind of tighten up the labor market. And this article is pointing to the fact that while growth continues, it has actually slowed a little bit. although the overall unemployment rate is unaffected at 3.8%. But we've seen a couple of things kind of move through the labor market, and for the first time in a while, the private sector is grown by less than expected, although still growing.
I think, Dan, this is one of those indicators that Powell keeps talking about, and it's what really the market's looking for to see, hey, listen, here's some significant change, Powell, that you've been talking about, and this should impact rates. Like, you're either going to hold tight or, maybe even lower rates. And I mean, you guys know where I stand. I think all of these indicators are a little bit of a sham, and I think they're going to try to save face at some level. But I really think we're going to see some level of like another point increase over the next 12 plus months. I don't know. I mean, I think we're going to see some serious increases. I think the election is going to have a major bearing on how they do that. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, hey, listen, we're going in the right direction kind of conversation, but we're just going to one more quarter point because we thought we'd see a little bit more, steam on that number. I think rates are still going up, and I think everyone that's why this market's taking a hit, because what we are seeing in the earnings report is the majority of companies are hitting their numbers. And when you see that happening and you're saying to yourself, hey, listen, what's going on? And why is the market still struggling through this? I mean, we were talking about the other day, one of our portfolios we were chatting about, we had just gone to bonds on all of the S&P stuff, just under 4,200 on the S&P on one of our moderately conservative portfolios. We're just like, not worth the risk. We can get 5%. And now we're back at those levels. And that whole kind of roller coaster ride of this market is because we don't believe the Fed, and until we can trust what they're saying, until we can really see, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. I mean, the transparency just doesn't really feel to be there, and I think the market's feeling that too.
All that to say, ADP numbers can differ drastically from official government count and have historically been a reliable indicator of what's to come. And that's the last line of that article. Bringing us into our next one, which is realtors found liable for $1.8 billion damages in conspiracy to keep commissions high, by Elizabeth Buchwald, CNN. Interesting article here. Frankly, what is it? So, National Association of Realtors and Real Estate Industry Trade Group, right? That's what all realtors belong to. And some residential brokerages were found liable for $1.8 billion in damages after determining they conspired to keep commissions for home sales artificially high. The article doesn't really get into the nuts and the bolts of this. Okay, there's so much here that is not disclosed, and it really kind of leaves people wondering, so what did they do? Like, why would they find, well, it was Berkshire Hathaway, and Keller Williams were a couple of the agencies that were, found to be in this conspiracy. And what it really doesn't speak to is any of the specifics. And then, frankly, I'm kind of disappointed in the article because it just kind of says that they were found liable for this, or that the damages for the conspiracy was what they were guilty of in this. And so there's going to be appeals, and it's going to take, 3 years or so before any of those can really be processed. I have a hard time with it because it's almost misleading. If somebody doesn't understand how the real estate industry works, it's really hard to really piece this thing together because there's just not enough there. The understanding of the market is lately, if you're not a 1% realtor, you're gouging or something like that. If you're not a part of that, we're only charging 1%, then you're taking too much off of the table for a real estate transaction. And I'm left wondering. I mean, the industry used to charge, 7%, 10% on their commissions for transactions back into the 90s, and slowly but surely it's come quite a ways down. And people are even in a 5% commission structure where that's 2.5 to the buyer's agent and 2.5 to the seller, usually, feeling like that's too high. I'm not sure what the outcome is here. Were they honestly inflating above and beyond that 5% to some unrealistic number? We don't know. We just don't know. But it leaves people not feeling, not feeling confident in a real estate industry or realtors as a whole, where I've just had the opposite experience. You're going to get what you pay for with people, and having a fee that's built in that's reasonable for both sides of a transaction doesn't make sense. Why not?
Yeah, the article's a little light in the facts around, what the basis of the complaint was. But one thing that, is clearly stated here is that it applies to transactions that took place between April 15th of 2015 and June of 2022. So if you're working with either of those agencies during that time and had a transaction, it's a good thing to keep an eye on this story because you're potentially the beneficiary here of some kind of a class action. Although the article does close out in stating that, this is likely headed to appeals court and probably be a couple of years before it settles out. But keep an eye on those dates or on those agencies if you had a transaction between those dates. And on heels of the verdict as well, the plaintiff here in this suit brought the same suit against a number of other agencies, nationwide agencies. So I think the story is going to grow and there's further detail to come. But certainly for any of us who've been in the real estate market over these last few years, going back at least to 2015, it's a story worth following because, like I said, there could be a payout for you here someplace.
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, the whole commission piece and the disclosure of it. I mean, it's gotten. I don't know if anyone's closed on a house or bought property and so forth, and we see a lot of this type of documentation all the time from clients ourselves and so forth. It's a little overwhelming sometimes. The paperwork is just so huge, right? I mean, in the investment world, in the real estate world, there's just so much disclosure, so much stuff going on that honestly, by the time you're done, most people aren't reading the stuff. When I sit there, these, and it's funny when you meet people, you'll know like this person's a reader, this person's not a reader, and they zip right through the paperwork. And so you actually have to pause and kind of get to the bottom of what it is. But I agree with you, Seth. I mean, realtors don't have the greatest job. Like in the great, when the real estate market's hot and people are just buying houses left and right, like, yeah, they're probably getting overpaid. But when the real estate market's cold and you're working your tail off to try to, really get a sale or help people find a home or, get your house sold, a realtor can do a ton of work and not get paid, really not get paid for their time. And so it's really hard to quantify that. And since it's a commission only process, I mean, in a really hot real estate market, some realtors don't want to take houses that they're like, I'm going to have to show this thing 15 times and I can sell 5 houses in that time period. So it's hard. I mean, the commission world's hard. I mean, we face it. I mean, we do commission, we do fee, we do, all of the different types of, financial structures, whether we're doing planning fees or investment fees or however we do it. But the truth is you have to figure out what financially works the best for you. Like if you have an easy house to sell, maybe you can negotiate your rate with somebody, but a realtor is going to say yes or no to that. And that's kind of part of this whole thing. But how they're going to actually manage through this, I mean, people aren't going to want to be realtors anymore. If you're not getting paid, right? People just stop doing the work.
Next up, why Exxon and Chevron doubling down on fossil fuels makes sense. This is from Sienna Smith from Yahoo Finance. And this is a topic we hit on a couple of times. Both of these, giant fuel companies, oil companies have been in the news and money in the news in particular lately because of acquisitions they've made and mergers they've gone through. And this article points to that recent trend in the business here where Exxon bought Pioneer and Chevron bought Hess or invested in both of those companies to really double down on their access and their investment in the fossil fuel world, which some people looking at it kind of flies in the face of two things. One, this apparent global push towards green energy, and the fact that oil consumption is forecast to, peak and then begin declining in 2030. But I think from our perspective, I know, Ben's a proponent of this, and I think we've talked about it a number of times. It only makes sense. The path to green energy is going to be, laid by a lot of burnt oil. I mean, we are not going to be getting away from fossil fuels anytime soon.
I met with some clients recently and, very conservative about green energy and live it too. Like, I mean, they, have electric cars, they have a solar home. I mean, they're trying to live it as green as they possibly can. And, some people would be familiar with the term like, net zero, in that concept of like, well, I'm hoping that I'm giving back more than I'm taking. but I want to be net zero. And I appreciate all of that thinking. Unfortunately, there are just a lot of things that are just not there yet. It's like anything, right? We always want it before it arrives. And the technology has not fully arrived. We have technology, it's there, but just the cost to build the lithium batteries on our environment is absolutely horrific. We can't even manufacture or like refine or whatever it is, the lithium in the United States. They mine it here, they ship it to India or somewhere, and then they process it there, and then they bring it back. Because it's just the pollutant is so bad. Just even the solar panels, after they're no good, are just really very, very toxic for our world. I'm not sure why we don't jettison these things into space, but, like, that's what I always wondered, is like, why don't we jettison, the rods from nuclear power plants into space versus leaving them here on the Earth? I have no idea, but maybe there's somebody who's getting paid a lot more that understands why we're not doing that. But
well, the moon conservationists have already said no to that, Ben. So, sorry.
Well, I think we just shoot it past the moon. Like, there's got to be somewhere we can send it. So,
yeah.
Anyways, I don't know why we harbor the stuff here, but that being said, Dan, like the 2030 thing, I mean, what do you think about that? We're going to hit the peak in 2030. I don't even think that's the case. The growth of energy demand against this is just insurmountable, and the technology is getting better, but it's not growing at the rate that we need, from what I can tell. I mean, I don't think we're 7 years away from reducing our oil production demands.
Yeah, that point gets made in the article. They're saying that this whole notion of a tipping point at 2030 is entirely a Western perspective. All these emerging markets and developing economies around the world would raise their hand and disagree and say that hey, we're still going to be using this energy and our demand is increasing. Yours may be waning, but ours is increasing. And even this tipping point they reference, it says the expectation is that the world will consume 102 million barrels a day at its peak before falling to 97 million barrels a day by 2050. I mean, it's a negligible difference. I mean, we're still burning 100 million barrels a day. So,
right.
Being in the position of owning a well is not a bad spot to be.
Yeah, and I think these guys I mean, I know that Chevron and Exxon are doing a lot for the green energy space. I mean, they're looking at all sorts of different pieces of research, but they're no fools. If they're buying up this stuff at this volume, they know 2030 is not the date. And their attitude is probably like, well, if you guys go to solar, great, we'll export it all. I mean,
I think that on top of, these are resources that are available when you have Biden shutting down the Alaska pipeline in favor of producing oil and getting oil from Venezuela and increasing their production. There's sorry. That doesn't work well for me. And frankly, it won't work well for you either. So them Exxon increasing their holdings in the Permian Basin, which is in Texas and New Mexico, some of the largest oil reserves we have in the continental U.S., and then also Guyana, which is the Chevron's pivot into Hess, which is approximately 11 billion barrels equivalent of recoverable resources. It's a newer finding in the oil sector for those resources, and one that, frankly, the Exxon has been in control of now as of late. But yeah, it's good business for those companies, and it's, I think, ultimately going to wind up being good business for the rest of us in our prices that we see here with oil roughly 80, where we've been as high as 130. And look at the price at the gas tank. I mean, really, you guys, how much higher do you want that to go? And the green energy is not going to solve that for us right now.
It's not in the pricing, because we're an investment show, right? So, the pricing with these, potential buyback increase opportunities with the merger of these companies should only push or stabilize these share prices for time to come. But that remains to be seen.
You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are going to be talking about found money and how to keep it. If you are in the podcast world, or if you're even listening to us right now on the radio, go ahead, grab your phone, hit that podcast app, And when you bring up Money on Tap, when you subscribe, just send us a message at info@yourmoneyontap.com. We've got some Money on Tap drip for you, and or swag for you, whichever you want to call that. But we'd love to get you hooked up with some Money on Tap gear here. And if you're feeling super generous, then just write us something in the comments there on those podcasts. Those are all ways that you can help us build Money on Tap. We love doing this show, and we love you being here with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Hey everyone, Dan Mickelon here with Brayshaw Financial. Looking for a hassle-free way to invest? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. With Brayshaw Financial Group, you can start investing with as little as $100, enjoy a user-friendly platform with a diverse range of investment options. Visit Brayshaw Financial Group and start your investment journey today. Brayshaw Financial Group, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking about found money and how to keep it. You know, windfalls are or unexpected wealth is a part of what we manage through in financial planning, or what we plan through in financial planning. You know, the thing that kind of comes to mind as we were talking about this is how many of us, Ben, you've shared this, like, I can't remember where you were going with your brothers, but you were talking about if we won the lottery. I mean, who hasn't had that conversation? If I won the lottery, what would I do with that money? Well, maybe that's not the case. And maybe that's not the way to process through this. You know, that's not something that we typically have inside of a financial plan or planning conversation is, you know, when are you going to win the lottery? Let's plan for that. But it's more common than not that people have somebody in their family, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, that, you know, have resources, and they've already had a part of their conversation, you know, be somewhat of an expectation around something like that happening. And that's very common inside of a planning conversation. And we're here to discuss this. Share some real life experience going through this with you. Some of it's fun, you know, and frankly, some of it is sad as well, because that's just part of the human experience when we're going through life. We have those in here as well. We want to help you just get prepared, and hopefully, you know, there's a conversation for you to have. We love the dinner table conversations or the coffee table conversations with families, and you know, what next steps are. If that's you, you can get a hold of us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We love the opportunity to just have a free consultation with us at Brayshaw Financial Group. And if you're starting that conversation, great. If you've already been involved and engaged in the planning process and wanting something else, maybe some different ideas, that's what we do in those process sessions as well. You know, we don't want people to just feel like they're obligated in any way to work with us. That's not what we're here for. We're here to help. And if down the road you're needing some further assistance and a relationship with us at Brayshaw Financial and Money on Tap makes sense, wonderful. It's that easy.
Found money. You know, I think this is a really good show for a lot of people in a lot of ways, specifically because, like Seth, there's people that know they're getting an inheritance. There's people that have absolutely no idea, and there's so many more of those people out there. So if you're listening today saying, I'm not getting anything from anybody, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, you know, we were talking about before the show, there's people that inherit millions of dollars all the time. They don't even know the person existed. You know, it's a long-lost relative that, you know, doesn't have any children, or, you know, it's your parents' friend who doesn't have kids, or they have kids and they don't want to leave them a ton of money. We talked about that earlier. There's a lot of different things. I've worked with people who have bought life insurance policies to leave money to family members. And they're not super wealthy, but they bought a very large life insurance policy many, many, many years ago just to make sure that they could leave real wealth, real money to their family members, because they didn't need a lot to live on. And they said, well, how do I amplify this money to be more for them? Which is a great planning technique. There's just so many different things that you can do inside the world of leaving money that don't be surprised if you're one of them that all of a sudden gets a phone call one day saying, hey, you're the benefactor of XYZ. And it's probably not going to be the Prince of Nigeria, but as we were joking around earlier, but it really could be that you are the beneficiary of something. That doesn't mean you go and start opening up every email that's, fake and so forth. If there's money to be had, they'll get a hold of you and they'll fight to get a hold of you because that's their job. You'll hear from a law firm or an insurance company or financial planner. You'll be able to verify them long before you give them one piece of information. And it's a real thing. And I hope all of our listeners stay tuned as we kind of go through, how to deal with this emotionally, how to deal with it financially, how to manage the asset, how to figure out what's best for you to do with the asset. I think that's the part that people are really going to walk away empowered from today.
Yeah, there's definitely, good first steps and there's mistakes that have been made that for people that, have benefited from these kind of newfound money experiences, but had them not pan out so well, there's a lot of cautionary tales out there. So, how do you get prepared, or how do you react if it was a situation where you couldn't have possibly been prepared for, if it was truly just something that could have kind of landed in your lap? And the first thing that you really want to do is count the money, right? That's one way of saying, really begin to understand what it is that has come your way. There's likely to be a lot of paperwork attached. This inheritance could have been received in a lot of different forms, whether it's real estate, cash, stocks, a business. I mean, there's many things that change hands on the passing of one generation to the next. So really take the time and seek the right counsel to, properly interpret, what it is that you've received. So cash is simple enough, but if it's other assets, there are, kind of better, best, and really top of class ways to take that asset in and put it in a place that you can, safely hold it while you consider what moves to make next.
Yeah, you never know where it's going to come from. And I was thinking about a couple of years ago, my parents were called up by Publishers Clearinghouse, and guess what? My parents hadn't even been playing Publishers Clearinghouse and not for years, but you want to go back in time. In the 80s, my parents actually won it was a Chrysler car from Publishers Clearinghouse, believe it or not. One of those statistics out there that nobody knew. It was just a green Bomber as I was growing up. This avocado green Chrysler that I was really happy when we got the Subaru after that. Because that became our go to the mountain car, and we got to learn how to ski, so that was fun. Anyways, so clients get money, and people get money in all sorts of forms and fashions. And by the way, that Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes was a scam, and they were very aggressive. My parents are safe. I know you guys call all the time, just making sure mom and dad are okay, because they get a lot of these calls.
But they really want a car, right? Though, I mean,
they really want a car. Oh yeah, yeah. And that convinced me as a kid. I'm pulling those Publishers Clearinghouse out, and I'm licking the stamps and sending them off, and never bought any magazines through them, but I never won either, but I will. So something that's pretty common, right, is the parent passes away, and the assets kind of get, either the conversations had a lot of the time with mom and dad, what's going to happen in there. And we've had people that receive those assets, and they get a conversation before that with the parents saying, don't you ever sell any of these. And so that's what they're left with, is they're left with, a portfolio of stocks. And some of these, they've held for 10, 20 years because they're just terrified. What if they sell them? And, some of them aren't even relevant companies anymore. They're just like, what do I do other than hold these things and can't move? So that's, one way that we've experienced a client receiving these gifts and funds, and so how do you unpack? Well, what was the intention of mom, dad, uncle, or whoever, auntie that passed these off? That's definitely a great topic inside of this to try to consider, and that can muddy the waters as well, and that can hold things up. And another scenario, which is certainly very common, is one partner passing or the spouse passing. And they're, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, a lot of the time they're typically they're the financial decision maker. Well, inside of what they passed on, there was a lot of real estate inside of that. And that real estate had some real needs, like a mortgage or an HOA, or the pipes froze over the winter, and now you've got, $100,000 of fixes that you have to come up with. And, you name it, the insurance money's late, or they gave, the deposit to the contractor and they disappeared. And so now they're using other resources to try to backfill in this scenario, but never really sitting down to understand what the impact is on their overall financial health. Because these kind of assets, as much as they are assets, without cash flow or without access, can really hinder the ability of your long-term financial health. And so that's another scenario that we see people locked up in grief, locked up in not understanding what they have, and fear for taking a wrong step or decision, or making a wrong decision in this process. So we recognize that immediately as some of the holdups inside of our world and in the transfer process.
Seth, that's the from the grave instructions that are like, how do you, as a financial planner, go against mom or dad's wishes of what you should do with the money and feel like a good steward, child, benefactor of their love? And I have story after story of people inheriting money with some sort of, forever instructions that seem to, stand far beyond common sense, because things change all the time. It's like, 50 years ago, GE was the household name. And, meanwhile, in the financial crisis in the last 2 decades, GE's gone through the roller coaster of the century and turning off their dividends and doing things that people said never would happen with GE. And so people get these forever instructions on stocks. And I have one client who had inherited $500,000 of one stock. And it was, or maybe it was more than that, I can't remember. It's fluctuated all over the place. The stock has gone up and down and up and down. And the worst part about it is that there's just no cost basis behind the stock. So the client doesn't actually know. They would have to pay taxes on the whole thing if they liquidated it. So that kind of is holding them to the fire of keeping the stock, because they just don't want to pay taxes on the whole thing. And they've struggled because they've been through so many people and held the stock so long, and they're well into their retirement years as it is, that now it's just something they have to leave to their kids. But when I met them a decade or so ago, I was like, we need to stop reinvesting the dividends. They weren't even taking income from it because dad said not to touch it. So it had been reinvesting dividends for a couple decades, maybe longer. And they're so outweighted. They've got this one stock that they have, like basically a quarter of their assets in. Like, you never have one thing that was a quarter of your assets unless maybe it was your home or some, you just would never do that. Like, it's not well balanced. It's not a healthy portfolio. And the company hasn't done really great. So it's one of these things. It's like, I get calls from them. It's the funniest thing. Every few months, 3, 4, or 5 months, I get calls. The husband's like, and he's not the one who inherited his wife. He's like, we should have sold that thing. And but the taxes, and he's like living in this quandary with me. And I'm like, yeah, hey, bud, I understand. But unless you want to pay taxes on it, he's like, yeah, I know we don't want to pay taxes. He's just like, he knows that they didn't really handle it right because it was just this is the instructions from the grave. And now they're well into their years to saying, why did we do this? And it's just kind of like a lost piece. And they're happy that they stopped reinvesting the dividends, and they're now using some of that for income, and it's become a healthier retirement for them, but it's still not what it should be. And he knows that. And they're thankful for that. But if you've inherited something, no matter who you go to, no matter what you do, just use some discerning advice that, advice from your parents or from the grave is really not forever. They're just trying to give you, hey, listen, keep this. It should be good. If things turn and the tide changes, we'll then reevaluate. But if it stays, then keep it going. And that's really what I think those kind of instructions are, guys. But this forever hold scenario is a devastating thing on someone's inheritance.
Yeah, I think just understanding, most of the time those instructions are your best interest at heart, right? That's the concern. And are they saying that you don't have the capacity or ability to make a good decision for yourself? Is that what the instruction says? Well, probably not. You guys, we got to take a break. We're going to have some more fun coming up here listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. When we come back, we are going to get into getting some of the tips and insights here of how you can start to process through financial windfalls. You're listening to Money on Tap. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for personalized guidance to kickstart your investing journey? Look no further. Brayshaw Financial Group and our planners are here to help. Our team of experts will provide personalized advice tailored to your financial goals. Visit BrayshawFinancial.com today to schedule your free consultation. Brayshaw Financial, investing made easy.
You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Hey, we love to engage with our podcast listeners and our radio listeners as well. And if that's you, please subscribe and just leave us a message there on wherever you're subscribing, or a rating or stars, whatever there's available. That helps us out at Money on Tap and helps us get the message to people out there that need to hear, need to hear from somebody, whatever it is, whatever the topic is around their finances, and, taking the next step and becoming a successful investor, and we talk a lot about life here as well, just becoming successful in life. That's part of, what permeates finances. There's a lot baked into it, right? There's no way around it. We all need it. We all have it, and we all use it differently and have our experiences, and love hearing yours as you share them with us. We're going to get going here on the topic. Yeah, thanks for bringing me back to earth here. We're talking about found money, right, and how to keep it. And it's more and more a common story of the windfall that's unexpected and sudden financial changes that are happening. And Dan, you just had some really what I loved was your insight here into the change and how this can really affect in the process, and some tips for people as they're going through this.
Yeah, before the break we were talking about instructions from the grave, right? Those last words that the benefactor said to the beneficiary, "Hey, never sell this, always hold this." Whether or not that's good long-term advice is kind of an individual scenario. But the one thing that I think all recipients of some kind of inheritance like this can truly believe and understand and take to heart is that whoever left you this gift did so to raise you up, to empower you, to make life better for you, to take pressure off in any given scenario. So if you are, as the receiver of this gift, someone who's struggling with past due debts, they have obligations that wear on them, that really put them in a financial situation that's untenable, or if you've had medical things, real family needs that you've put off for any given amount of time just because it wasn't financially convenient, do those things, eliminate that debt, pay off those credit cards, get some attention to your mortgage. If it's something medical or health-based, do those things. If it's an experience with your kids or your loved ones that have been put off but it's long overdue, whoever left you this money, this asset, would want to see you do those things. They did so to put a smile on your face, to make your life better. So don't pass over those opportunities. Take advantage of that and do so understanding that whoever left it to you is enjoying watching you have that experience. That's where the love is.
After, really getting into that count the money piece that you were talking about before, Dan, can't help but really advise people to start to assemble your team of professionals. If you don't already have them in place, this is critical for you. And there's a process that I think you want to just walk through this and make sure that, they check out as who they are, that, that they're not necessarily the first person you come across, and if that's us, then, certainly by all means, get a couple other people out there to have a conversation with and get real comfortable, because it's an intimate piece that you're going to start to work through in putting your CPA, your accounting together, your numbers, your bookkeeping, your financial planning, your attorney. All of those pieces need to really come together to work for you. And it is some work, that's okay. I think some people think that once they get money that, we're out of here. No more work for me or something like that, right? That's kind of the alleviation of our mindset goes into this, ultimate freedom mode. And, we passed level whatever in our video game. Now, this is work. It's sitting down. It's conversations that are uncomfortable. Now, if you're not willing to do that or not willing to have those, statistically, right, we've got those stories for you as well. I grew up with a good friend of mine that, went through a wealth transfer with his family, and they did not do that. It was, I think there was just too many hard conversations for them to have. And they wound up being in a worse off situation in the end of it all than had they just gone through and really start to put these pieces together. That next piece that, is so important as you're pulling this together is that plan. We fail without them. Ultimately, unless you just intuitively have the design from our creator that you are blessed above and beyond all of us, human beings that live here on earth, and you now know how to just manage it all. Probably not. And a plan is just what helps us kind of keep it on the road.
Seth, you talk about, somebody inheriting something and be worse off later on. It happens all the time. I mean, it's kind of like the normal story for lottery winners. You hear about how they won all this money and next thing you know, they're bankrupt. And some enormous percentage of, lottery winners like lose everything and go bankrupt. People don't know how to live within their means. They've never managed wealth. They've never managed money like that. So, the first thing to do is obviously to engage the professionals, as you had mentioned, so you don't find yourself worse off than when you started. And like Dan said, managing the desire of someone wanting to bless you, wanting you to have a better life by giving you this asset, is really about you sitting down and figuring out, how do I utilize this? What's best for me? Because someone could leave you something and say, you should hold on to this stock forever. Well, if you're living, if the stock is GE and they turn off their dividend, and you're now living in a box because you have a multi-million-dollar stock, well, that's obviously not the right direction. So those are things that people, if you're not getting income from the asset or something that's going to help better your life, then why have it? And so when we talk about, finding the right people, there's a lot of reasons why you have to find the right people. And some of it has to do with managing the taxes and the legal consequences, because, consequences can be, not favorable. Doesn't mean that there's bad scenarios, but you could improve the taxable liabilities that you have potentially with an asset. For instance, sometimes you can inherit an IRA, and well, maybe it's a large IRA and you don't want to pay taxes on it all at once because you have a decent job. Well, you might be able to stretch out that tax bite depending on how the beneficiary system is set up. Or maybe you inherited an annuity and you say to yourself, well, I don't want to pay the taxes on that either because tax is income on all the gain. So maybe I want to spread that out. And you might be able to do that too in what we call a post-death 1035 exchange, which is a complicated group of words to share, but there are things you can do to potentially mitigate the taxes to allow you to inherit the funds in the very best way possible so that you're not paying unnecessary fees and expenses. I mean, no reason to give more money to the government, the tax guy, than you have to.
Yeah, it's something else too to keep in mind is this whole paid forward notion, right? If you've come into money and you have kids of your own, or all of a sudden charitably minded because of this benefit that you've received, expectedly or unexpectedly, just taking a small portion of that money, reinvesting it in life insurance based upon yourself, can pass that wealth on through the generations, right? You can really establish a foundational base of wealth for your lineage to come for a long period of time just by breaking off potentially a small piece, depends on the size of the inheritance, obviously, but some small portion of what you received to set up the next generation to come, leaving the rest of it for you to do what you like with.
The idea that, you can keep the story going is a really wonderful way of kind of passing on the legacy of the first person who had the legacy. I think that's something to really consider inside, wealth management with a family, which is how a lot of people came to this country, have made their families get a better start through life insurance.
You guys are getting out ahead of me still. I'm still stuck back here and, the caution tale. Hey, look out, you guys. What do you want to be careful here? You want to make sure that be wary of the friends and family. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about, your immediate family, although, maybe that is the case.
Don't tell anybody you inherited money.
That's the truth. And believe it, a lot of the time, those are very public arenas. If it wasn't through a trust, it was or a life insurance piece, it's an annuity. It's going to go ahead through that probate, and it will be known to those people out there that are wanting to know. So it's very common for athletes and new wealth, people that have found new wealth, to have people just kind of pop out of the woodwork and have all sorts of opportunities for you, or requests, or you name it. There's ways that people have of getting ahead of this, and really not it can just really destroy, I think, the best opportunity for those people to establish those legacies like Ben and Dan were talking about. And the other thing I would say is resist making large purchases. It can be it can be available, not saying that that's not a possibility, to have some large purchases, but for that to be the first thing that you do when you've received these gifts, that's a telltale right there. That's a caution, red flag for you right there, that something else inside of you is kind of taken over, and it's not your best option. And just waiting a little bit to go through the process, you could possibly do a purchase in a way that just blows you out of the water, because you just hadn't known that you could do it this way. You can still get it, but you could do it better. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Found Money and how you get to keep it. Hey, this is Seth Cressman with Brayshaw Financial Group. Are you looking for a hassle-free way to invest? Look no further than Brayshaw Financial Group. With Brayshaw Financial Group, you can start investing with as little as $100 and enjoy a user-friendly platform with diverse ranges of investment options. Visit Brayshaw Financial Group and start your investment journey today. Brayshaw Financial Group, investing made easy.
We appreciate you listening to Money on Tap with Ben, Seth, and Dan. You can contact us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. And now, more of this week's program.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. We are talking about found money and how you can keep it. We don't have much time left in this show, so we want to make sure that we get into some of the meat and potatoes. To do that, guess who's up? Mr. Ben Brayshaw. Would you help us out?
Well, thanks, Seth. I appreciate that. So some people are going to inherit $10,000, $50,000, $100,000. And, I think the first thing we don't encourage people to do is just start, paying debt down and, investing in the stock market and taking that. The first thing you do is assemble your team. You figure out, do I need people? Do I need to address the taxes? We talked about that earlier. And then you start saying to yourself, what do I do? And you really need to balance these three things. One is, what is my debt? What are the rates? How does that matter to me today, especially with the interest rate market being much higher than it was, so you can actually make money on some of your cash? how much liquidity do I need? And should I be investing this in a time period that's maybe longer than, the next 3 to 6 to 12 months? Like, how does this look for me? And, a lot of people, like, you read a lot of articles out there. It's like, just pay down your debt, pay down your highest interest rate. And the truth is, I've had people where they've inherited, 10 or $20,000 and they're like, what do I do with this? Like, when my parents passed away, we inherited some cash, okay? And it wasn't a lot, and it wasn't enough to pay off a mortgage or do anything like that. And my wife said something to me very wise, and I actually was, really impressed by the perspective that she had. And it was just the concept of, well, listen, it's not a lot of money. It's not going to impact our life financially. What's one thing maybe we could do with the funds that would be in memory of your parents? That's something that you could pass to your kids. And I think was really valuable for me at the time, and trying to look at like how to utilize the money versus just doing something arbitrary, because that's what that was. It was the last memory of my parents. And that's how a lot of inheritance is. But, someone might inherit $10,000 and say, hey, I got a $200,000 mortgage. Maybe I'll just pay down my mortgage, which is at 3 or 4%. Well, the truth is I would probably tell that person that might not be the best move if you're really good with money, because maybe you put it in a CD making 5% for the next few years and have a little bit of emergency cash in case you lose your job and you need to pay your mortgage. Now, not only are you outpacing the interest rate of your current mortgage interest rate, but now you've created more liquidity for yourself, and you can then always take that money out and pay down the mortgage later on with as much or equal to that scenario. But also you've empowered yourself so that if you do have a financial crisis where you lose a job or something, that cash is available. And if it's significantly higher than that, well, maybe we're actually involving a conversation about how to invest a portion of those funds, because maybe you've inherited more money than your mortgage, and maybe you just stick that in a CD that's making more interest than you would be paying, what you're paying on your mortgage, and you just pay it off when you can't replace that CD rate at that, So there's a lot of different moving parts, and I think that's why we're saying assemble your team, because between taxes, between paying off debt, between buying that like couple things you've always wanted, or fixing that thing in the kitchen or the bedroom, or buying that piece of furniture or car, replacing this or replacing that, like there's always those things. But like Seth was pointing out, don't frivolously go spend. First, do a plan. Figure out what everything's going to cost, and then figure out what makes the most sense. And that's where your team comes in. And if it's 10 or 20 or $30,000, give us a call. We'll still chat with you. We'll go through it, maybe confirm some of your thinking and whatnot. Because honestly, you might have other things involved financially that together could have a more meaningful impact. And I think ultimately creating the most impact financially for yourself in a positive manner is the goal we all have. So that's really what we're trying to get you to kind of embrace and say, that's the direction I'm going to take.
Yeah, I think those are wise words. I mean, there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction to go ahead and do something rash when this money's come in. But, number one, don't just quit your job, right? You need health insurance, right? So there's the secondary considerations. Don't buy that massive house because there's going to be property taxes due next year, right? So make sure before you take that first bold step that you understand all of the follow-through ramifications of that kind of a decision. So taking a little time, assembling the team, and getting to the point of realizing what are your immediate needs that this newfound wealth could help you address are just really important and things to consider. Take time with that.
Yeah, I loved what you wrapped up with there, guys. For one, the highest best, right? It's really that gift is really all about putting you and your family in the best situation possible. At the end of the day, that's the intention, no matter what. There might be some other things inside of that have been given directions towards. You might have some immediate debt. You might have some other things that you've just been putting off, maybe some health surgeries, maybe whatever those things are to really put you in the best seat possible to start to make those decisions for yourself going forward. But let's go ahead and try to embrace that heart of how do we get into this and be open. Let's not be limited. Let's not let, the pressure and the worry and on all those factors that have come into this with maybe some ties into this. Let's try to unlock that with the best of what God wants for us and what that next step forward could look like. And we love you guys out there. We really appreciate all of you for listening here today and listening to Money on Tap and sticking with us. If you have any questions, any concerns, anything like that, give us a call, 855-226-8551 or info@yourmoneyontap.com. Ultimately, we're here for you. Our heart is here for you at Money on Tap and Brayshaw Financial Group. We love you being a part of the show, and we want you to be successful in your investing, and can't wait to be here with you next week. Thanks a lot, you guys.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.